So you've got big dreams of being a developer and one day owning these big assets in cool locations with hundreds, if not thousands of tenants. I'm here to tell you what it's actually like. I have hundreds and hundreds of tenants in my portfolio, ranging from students to commercial tenants to professionals to workers to everyone in between. I've done this for years now. I've been in the game 15 years. I've done new build refurbishments, buying existing assets, renting those out, HMOs, single lets, new build residential apartments, refurbishments. It just goes on and on and on. So I've done quite a bit. But let's go to the development side of things. What's it like actually owning one of these big buildings when you've got tenants in, and the compliance stage of it, and how you have to look after these buildings, the residents, to ensure that they're safe. So I'm going to go into some of this for you. I've got some notes here. So I'm going to run myself through what it's like. When you're running one of these big buildings, you're dealing with it at scale. So you're not just dealing with one tenant, you're dealing with a host of residents across these buildings that have different ways of working, how they want to be responded to, how they want to report any issues they have if they have issues, how they experience the place. They could be someone that likes to play music loudly, they could be learning an instrument, they could just be somewhat inconsiderate and be disturbing of the residents, and the residents will still blame you as the owner and manager, even though you're not the one playing the music and you've got rules set in place. And so it can be quite a task to manage some of these buildings, but I'm going to run you through it. You've got big ideas, you want to be a developer, you want to be the owner, you want to be a big landlord. But here's the reality of that. You got to be quick when you're making decisions in these places, especially if there's issues, as word can spread quickly for bad news. Bad news is the quickest type of news that can spread. Good news, not so much, but it goes noticed. The cool side of this is cash flow. When you've got these big buildings and you're operating them correctly and they're in good condition and you're getting the good rents you're meant to and you're not over leveraged, cash flow can be actually quite attractive. You can cash flow, depending on the size of your building, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions in cash flow. And it's, yes, I gotta be honest, yes, it's nice, but it's a result of years of hard work, and a lot of resources have to go into reinvesting into the asset to make sure that they're being well kept, the maintenance is good, condition is good. You have to preempt a lot of maintenance as well. You don't want some jobs that are progressively getting worse that haven't been reported. For instance, in our buildings, especially at the end of the year, so at least once a year in our buildings, we'll have our maintenance guy go through all flats, whether or not they've reported maintenance issues or not, and just go through a checklist, checking the common issues, shower heads, sealant around showers to make sure there aren't any leaks, sealant around kitchen worktops, under the kitchen sink to make sure there's no leaks in the pipes. Door stops, making door stops fitted correctly, hangers, hooks, wall hooks, make sure there's just a whole host of, there's a checklist we send them through to go into there, make sure the place is looking perfect and the maintenance is in a good place. So we don't want things, because we don't want things to get progressively worse, and we can actually do this work whilst the resident's still in there. So that's pretty helpful. These assets are cool, they're big, they're tangible, they're potential legacy assets if you want to pass them on or build up wealth over time, rent these assets, operate them, and then refinance them later on once the value's increased because you've increased rental and you've looked after them. It's a good way to pull out cash continually. For now, tax-free, as there's no tax when you're refinancing and using debt, and you can then take those funds and reinvest it in other deals. So that's a cool thing that can happen when you're running these big assets. When you're running these big assets, all problems are multiplied. In one of my assets that I've got, The heating system is one heating system for the entire building. So this building has dozens of apartments in, and if that central heating system goes down, then that means potentially all flats are without heating, all flats are without water. So you have to be very quick. Not only do you have to preempt some of the maintenance stuff, when there's issues, and you have to be reactive, you've got to be very quick. Otherwise, quickly you can have a bunch of disgruntled residents, which you don't want. And you've also got to let them know very quickly. So that is quite an experience. And again, I've got third-party managers managing a bunch of my assets. And we've got to make sure they're on point because of my profile, and I'm online. People can find me. They know who owns it. They'll find me online and they'll personally message me, and I'll understand what's going on, and I'll then get in touch with third-party managers. So although that's not the most fun, I do like being contacted because at least I know what's going on. But you're always on. Fire alarm systems, they need to be maintained on a regular basis. You have to do at least weekly checks of the fire alarm and emergency button release, and making sure that the fire alarm is working and the sensors are working. Annual checks are obviously done by a wider company, but you have to do weekly checks. Sorry, biannual checks are done by a company to come in and test all the facilities. And then you do weekly checks of the facilities and making sure that the exit buttons, the exit release buttons work, the emergency buttons work. So that's an important aspect of fire. Same thing with any potential water, sprinkler systems. Lift, making sure the lifts are well maintained, that they're on point. Obviously, if the lift breaks down, and again, we have an external company that does the maintenance on these. If you find yourself any issues with those, and tenants are walking up and down stairs, multiple flights of stairs, that could be an issue that can arise very quickly. So that's some of the stuff that aren't as fun. Other compliance deadlines, everything requires compliance in the building. I mean, look, if I give you a list of all the compliance areas, I mean, I'm just gonna roll off some off the top of my head. Lightning protection. So there's usually a rod that runs from the top of your building to the ground. So if the lightning strikes, the idea is that it hits the top of this rod and then runs through this rod and hits the ground. That needs to be serviced annually. If you've got sprinklers, that needs to be serviced. Automatic opening vents, they need to be serviced. Fire alarm system serviced. Fire doors checked. Fire door closers checked and serviced. Making sure your windows are clean and your building's clean throughout. That's done on a regular basis. Servicing is also required for if you've got any solar system, solar panels, that needs to be serviced and checked on a regular basis. If you have, what else is there? Let me give you two more that needs to be checked on a regular basis. Obviously, gas is obviously one, regular, at least annually. Same thing with electrics. There's so much compliance required in these buildings because you've got people's lives and safety, their livelihoods and their safety in your hands. So you've got to make sure you're compliant as a provider. That's something we've always spent a lot of time and resource on doing. But it all sounds cool when you go to do one of these buildings, right? But when you've got to upkeep them, maintain them, it costs a lot of money to maintain them. So it's not just about, oh yes, I've got £1 million of rent coming in from this building a year. Well, you might have to spend £400,000 a year managing it, maintaining it, paying any bills, utilities, maintenance. You can quickly lose a lot of money, and then if you've got debt, you're gonna have to pay down the debt. So you can quickly not cash flow in some of these assets as well. One bad manager can seriously kill your operations, and so you've got to make sure the good manager's in place and they're really looking after things, because the knock-on impact of having a poor manager is just disastrous. So obviously safety, like I said, is paramount. And Compliance I mentioned, fire safety compliance, building safety, obviously insurances need to be correct, various health and safety, fire extinguishers, regular audits are done in these buildings. But it makes you more cautious, it makes you more structured and more disciplined as an owner and operator to make sure operations are going well. And you also prioritize risk and try to control the risks before anything happens or before they escalate. So yeah, there was a saying that I heard recently which is so true. What you own owns you. So yes, it's cool owning these big assets. Yes, it's nice having millions and millions of pounds worth of real estate, but you're responsible to them. And if you've got lending on them and there's banks involved, you're responsible to the bank as well. And so it takes a part of you to run them and make sure they're being well looked after, make sure the residents are happy and they're safe and they're doing their job, they're paying the rents and they're looking after the premises. It takes its toll as well. So there's no freedom or so-called passive income because you've got to actively manage your investments. Something to keep in mind. Something I'd say when you're aiming for the big assets is don't rush to scale. Make sure especially if you're owning it long term, pick the quality materials, go into serious detail when it comes to the mechanical and electrical components that you're picking. Make sure your team understand that you're holding it long term and that you need to understand future operation, maintenance. I mean, there's things that I did, like for instance, in my buildings, I didn't want keys in my buildings. I want it to be keyless. And we've got this system, this door entry system, where you can access the doors through an app. This app allows you to use your phone to access the doors. And so if someone's lost their key, they can use anyone's phone, their phone or anyone else's phone to get into their apartment. And also from a management perspective, it's less of a nuisance. If someone's lost their key, you've got to get a key cut, then you've got to hope that the keys aren't in the wrong hand, then you've got to change locks. All that madness is gone. So I knew it was a bigger cost for us to implement that and install that system opposed to normal keys. But I knew that would pay us in the long run in terms of maintenance and operations. So you really have to keep that sort of thing in mind. So you've got to learn the systems, pick the right systems for your buildings. So it's not as glamorous as it looks owning these big assets. They're quite heavy, they're clunky. But if you respect it and you look after them well and you run them well, then it's a phenomenal addition to your portfolio and hopefully your life. These big buildings don't forgive bad management. Management needs to be on point. I cannot stress how important that is. And compliance doesn't make you any further money, but it will cost you your building. So that needs to be done. But the big assets force you to grow. They force you to be more organized, more prepared. You understand what's in store when it comes to running them. And you kind of work out whether you want to be in that sector or not. I've got big commercial assets and I've got big residential assets. The big commercial assets are less work because the leases are usually on FRI leases. But the big residential assets have a bigger turnover, but it really depends on the tenant type, the location, where it is, who you're renting it to, so it can vary. But I thought that would give you a bit of an insight into what it's like owning these assets. Yes, it's cool and it looks fine online and you may meet people that own these big buildings, but there's a lot involved. You can't leave management to it. And you've got to be very proactive.